Wrap. Hey, Will. Danny. Good job, Danny. How you feeling?
Oh oh my God, what a relief.
Yeah, that's great.
So feels good. It's nice I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main benefit.
Yeah.
I couldn't find the unmute button.
How was the rest of it after I left?
It was fine. I think kind of similarly, like there were definitely some things I would struggle on. And I think like the setup of problems and like what they initially asked would be tricky. And then like once they explained it a little bit more, I usually got the thing pretty
Mm.
easily. But like the build up to the thing, I was like, I have no idea what this is. And then they'd explain a little more. I'm like, oh, it's this. And they're like, yep, it's that. I'm like, okay, so this, and this.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, it was totally fine.
Cool. You seemed decently comfortable.
Yeah, it definitely, I'm glad I prepared as much as I did. Um, yeah, it felt totally fine, like getting up there. Um, and I'm glad like everyone on the committee is, I like, I mean, I feel like I know all of them pretty well. So that
Hmm.
felt good too of like, okay, it wasn't just like one semester with these people. It was like, I've
Hmm.
spent a lot more time with them than just that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when Dr. Finkel asked you, Danny took his call this morning, Christian. Or is it call? Call, call? Yeah. When Dr. Finkel asked you that, like, so how would you do this spatially? I'm like, we have a well-mixed box. It is not, if we have to worry about that stuff, we're host.
I know. I
Yeah.
was I was serious when he was like, "What are like? How are you going to look at the error of these different things?" I was just like, "Oh no!" I'm like, "You're giving Tammy more ideas of things I'm going to have to do now." Like,
No,
of the,
I don't have any problem with those. I mean, I already worry about that stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, and then I'm like, well, I mean yeah. Yeah. The hard stuff, they don't know to ask you, so that's also a good thing. Like the stuff that we really have to struggle with. Hey everyone. We're just
I was
chatting about
surprised Finkel even asked that
Danny's
question,
well,
to be honest.
Paul, you want to make an announcement?
I can just read it. Yeah. Seahawks game again. So Erica, for you, I got it. We're set here.
I like it. Nice.
Um, so yeah, game time 4:30. Love to have people to just let me know if you want to come and make sure we have a table that's big enough.
I'll be there cheering for the Seahawks.
Go Hawks.
I'm
Appreciate
sorry,
you.
Will. That sucked.
Oh, it's okay. It's fine. I hate the Rams, so as long as they get they get knocked out and the Patriots beat the Broncos, who I also hate, I'll be happy.
This
Will
is
can't
awful.
complain too much after what Indiana did.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I don't care about the NFL at this point now. That's enough for me.
Hey everyone. I saw Pi and then he disappeared. Hmm. Yeah, there we go. So I originally wanted to have this meeting in the new year. Or it is the new year, but like the first thing in the new year, think about what we're gonna do next. I know it feels like we have lots to do to even accomplish our current project, but it is time to begin thinking about what's next and writing proposals because it's such the long turnaround time. Um, so I guess I'm sure that many of you have ideas. I thought I would let you start and not pick on people, but just have a round robin of where would you like to see this go. Sometimes the answer for, oh my God, I can't possibly do this all in the same project is no, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to write a new project. So let's think about those things. Um, Things that are not going to happen in the field study, but you really wish you could do. And yeah, I thought I would let people not only bring forward ideas, but do you need, if you have a partially formed idea, do you need a space to build this idea out in a team meeting or other meeting? Do you need support? Do you need gathering? Like what would help you also? Should I have called on people?
Mike, could you repeat the beginning of that? I'm sorry for being late. We had a
No, it's all right,
chairs
Marilee.
meeting.
Ideas for follow-on projects. Like what have we come up with that we can't fully explore or explore at all in this project? And also, uh, I feel like we've gained a lot of knowledge, even if we still have a lot of questions. What, w- how could we leverage that? How does that become an asset?
I can perhaps start, although I don't have a very well fleshed out thought here. But I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to do a deeper dive with understanding that information display and understanding of the in-home inhabitants, right? We only have what 15 houses or so, and so we can't really do a good controlled, like some people see this and some people see this. And how does that information affect their trust in our system and how much they think the system is improving their indoor air quality? So I think it'd be super interesting if we could do something with a larger scale of participants where we have a dashboard display and like it doesn't even necessarily have to be an intervention, although that would be cooler. Or it could just be, a portable unit, but something to show like when people see the indoor air quality of their house, does that actually change their behaviors and motivate them? And what is that information that is going to elicit that behavior change that we want to see?
I would just agree with that. I think there's a lot that can be done relatively cheaply from the standpoint of the indoor, the portable unit. And I haven't seen any work that's really looked at that. Particularly if we have some people who, yeah, we could still do a control and experimental from the standpoint of you have a unit or you don't have a unit, and the differences there. And I think that, especially if we could look at even different times of the year as well within that, because it will vary, I think, with other environmental types of risks that they have, environmental health types of risks because of the seasons and things like that. And that's something that is really nice to be able to model as well.
Before we go on to other ideas, does anyone else on the team have thoughts around that?
Piece adds to that. I agree with both of those, and I like this idea of expanding out a little bit on what actually makes the displays useful or engaging or helpful. I think there's lots of ways to do that. But I think there's lots of projects that are making displays and not doing a good job of how are people actually interfacing with it? What is the information that they want? And I think with some of the things Erica and Pi have, are wanting to capture start to get some of that, but something that does a better job or looking into the question of, well, what is the information that they actually are looking at and digesting?
Mhm.
Because we have a lot of time that people look at the display but don't take an action. We can't capture any of that.
Yeah, and like part of it could be designing a display that's like actually in their house. Another part could just be providing that information to them in an app on their phone, or like just understanding, yet do people even realize this, and when they get that information, do they seek out a solution? So it could even just be like, you do a survey somehow. I don't know how you do it necessarily, but you do a survey and you capture just people's baseline level of concern, and then all of a sudden you give them information in a couple of different modalities and like messaging mechanisms, and then you give them that same survey at the end and see, have they acted or do they have intent to act?
And that's in the field I'm in, that is done. And they're a little, we call it a relatively somewhat dirty experiment, but then we also look at what else can we measure that would also, explain part of what's going on, and then what does the actual information they're getting, what does it do? And there has been work that's looking at, you know, these like this is a cue to them to go seek more information, and have they done it, and to what extent have they, maybe they've talked to a doctor at some point, or they've at least thought about it more, and they're paying more attention to that kind of information when it does come across them. So we talk sometimes about, I've got the wrong term, but you can almost talk about passive information stuff. You come across it, do you pay more attention to it, and then that act of, do you actually go out and seek information? Both of those are good things to be able to capture in the scheme of things.
Mm. I have felt like there's so many questions around people's interaction, and obviously the field experiment is not the place to test large numbers. And looking back, I'm like, why did I think that was a good idea? I thought we had to put everything in the same experiment so we would look interdisciplinary. That doesn't make it a good idea, right? So I would love to see this a little more broken down, and recognizing that numbers are one of our challenges in the field experiment. Like, how would we go the other way?
That's where I think, because there are more ways that, like, we do, having a portable air filter is, again, not as expensive. Getting, cleaning that air to some degree is much cheaper than it used to be. As well, we have more measurements of outdoor air. Now, granted, we're talking indoor air, but that relationship between outdoor to indoor, we have more measurements that are around communities and things. So we actually, I would argue, have more capacity now to take advantage of things that have perked up in this project. And I think this project, if I was reading and it was going to be an add-on, future grant that came off of this project, I would certainly be, there are pieces of information and pieces of, or some results that we can build on that can kind of show, like, hey, we see this trend, or hey, we see X and Y. We want to study that. And so I would look at that as part of in part, and we're showing how we're going to build out the next project associated with that. That would certainly perk up my ears if I was a reviewer.
Anyone else want to comment on this direction?
I don't know if this is this direction or a slightly different direction, but I would also be, I feel like, other than increasing our sample size or addressing some shortcoming that we identify in the limited field study, I feel like most of the more interesting questions are not the technical ones, but more the people ones.
Mm-hmm.
And but I would put in with the people questions the installers slash contractors and the programs that might support these, because one of the things that we've absolutely talked about is these even our intervention where we're saying we want it to be accessible to low-income families, it's still going to be not really affordable for direct purchase by a lot of low-income families, but more obtainable through programs that support our lower income communities. And so looking at, to the extent there is something to look at, looking at similar types of things, what makes them want to include these in their offerings, what makes them,
Mm.
what sorts of knowledge and training do they need to decide for themselves and then to install properly and then to communicate to residents well. Um, just that, closing the loop on the whole delivery system
Mm.
and having that be, I don't know how you do that. Marilyn and Erica probably have a better idea of how you would work with those folks and not just the residents. But to me, it's such a key part in actually transforming the market.
I agree. I think that's a very good point. And I think there are a number of questions, and it might start with finding out from a group of companies that might install these projects, as well as organizations that might fund it, or the policy side of it, and saying, okay, what do you need? What kind of data do you need? What kind of information would help with convincing you, or that would help to show the efficacy of this. So it could even be starting with some interviews of those folks. And we might look at folks, I don't know, like Ryan Scott, maybe to say, hey, Ryan, what do you know from a policy standpoint as far as how we might go about investigating this piece of it? But, and both from like programs that might do it. Plus, like you said, the training of the installers. Would a company say, yes, this is something we want to, would they see it as an entrepreneurial win for them?
So I will say, and this is not to naysay, but Ryan's working with Paul and I on another project on electrification, and he's having a hell of a time getting contractors to talk to him. It's so hard because this is not their motivation. But I think it's a really good question. We know that sometimes people do not like change, and these people might be those professionals. Sometimes they resist change, and sometimes they are excited to embrace it because it means new openings for them. And what's the difference between those opportunities?
So I will maybe yay say a little bit against your nay saying that Ryan trying to talk to contractors specifically in the state of Illinois, not Colorado, about electrification that a whole lot of people don't really care about or even know about is going to be different than talking to people in the West about solutions to bad outdoor air quality. Because I would guess that a huge number of contractors are asked by homeowners, what can I do to make my air better? And they don't have a good answer. So there might be a much more motivation to talk to us because the topic is much more front and center to them.
Yeah, that's fair. I think this also gets to something that Kristen's going to bring up in later meetings, that we're developing this training module, and so it's not exactly the same thing, but it's knowledge about air quality and how energy assessors bring air quality into their assessments. And so that's a similar question, though. Do people really care? Is there a market for that? How can you tell if there's a market for it? Kristen, maybe you want to say something about that.
I mean, you just said most of it. So, but
Dang it, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take your.
It's just to validate that, yeah, like you said, there's a market for the information, whether somebody values that certificate or that additional information that they're getting from that course, as well as on the flip side, is this information helpful for the contractors? So.
Okay, anyone, other thoughts?
One one thing that's sort of it is related. I was just thinking of another part of the country that might be interested in this from a contractor standpoint, and that could be areas of the country where they have fairly consistent ag burns. Um, so like the Flint Hills of Kansas is one. Down in Florida when they burn the sugarcane fields, that those are areas where we might see that people are like, yes, I would love to have this both, and there might be consumer demand and programmatic demand to help low-income people as well as contractors interested. So I'd add them to the list for the West. That includes the West, I mean.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm going to bring up a thing I'm going to be working on with Cheryl Magsamen and trying to draw some of you guys in exactly about Florida and the sugarcane burning.
Yeah, this thing that Kristen was bringing forward about like a market for it and contractors interested is valuable to them. I think that's an interesting question. As somebody who's been teaching practitioners on healthy homes for a number of years, I know that's often one of the questions. I mean, they like getting new knowledge. And a lot of these people are very curious, but it's one of the questions is, how am I going to be able to use this? Because contractors, when they go to training, they want it to be something that's actually going to be helpful, not that it is they're interested and it should be useful. So, but at the HPC conference for years, there's been an IAQ and Healthy Homes track, and we have hundreds of people attending those sessions. They're attending for some reason.
Mm.
And that could actually be a really good opportunity, a good venue to get a bit of a biased sample because most practitioners are not at the conference. It's a little bit of a biased sample of who's at the conference, but that could be a place to glean a lot of that information. And I like that they come to my sessions, but I don't always know why they've chosen my session over another one, that why they've decided that's where the value is.
So Paul, I'm not, I think sometimes HPC can be a biased sample because it is a certain class or a group of contractors and not others. But I think when the question is this valuable to somebody? It's not going to be valuable to everybody. So it might be at sometimes okay to select the people who are most likely to find it valuable because you don't need to get everybody. You just need to get a critical mass.
Well, and on a topic like this, you're first going to get the early adopters. And those are the kinds of folks who are going to HPC. And so what's making them value it? And then that's how you maybe start filtering back to the people who are less early adopters.
Yeah.
Thanks, Will.
Christian, do you have thoughts on the tech side?
Yeah, I had a
Or you don't have to stay on the tech side, but
sure, yeah, all tech. It's all tech, all there is. So a couple of places in addition to like that, the dashboarding things and ones we've talked about there. The more we do on this project, the more I wonder if some of the opportunities are really event specific inside of the home, which is a little different than the infiltration one, but some of the things we've built in. So I've been playing around with some ideas of, well, why don't we have this equivalent of the smart thermostat for your range hood and some of these other high polluting events? And so some of this was coming from Ellison's Epic Homes, where it seemed like they were identifying some pretty key contributors and take people out of it one step more by just building into the solutions that are already in the home. So that's one place. And this one is a little tangential, but one that we've been kind of framing out, and this is from the outside air in, is trying to do a better job or look into what fraction of our large inhalable is actually infiltration, which is what we're doing now, versus transportation being carried in. It sounds like there's actually a pretty large fraction that's coming from on people's clothing and boots and things like that. And so it's not quite in the same space because it's not like the smart or the intervention piece, but are we actually tackling the right source of these large particles? So those are the ones that are in my head right
Can
now.
it is large like 10 and above, or what, how do you define it?
Well, I keep bouncing back and forth between that, but bigger than the stuff that we typically see infiltrating through the cracks. And so, 2, 5, 4, 10. I don't know. I think it'll depend on what we actually use to measure it, how we decide to draw those lines. But I think we have pretty strong evidence that things like smoke infiltrate, but also get created inside the homes. But there's some of these things that are being transported on people that probably aren't the smalls, right? So if we're trying to look at how much is being carried through the door because of people's shoes, it's probably gonna be the 10 and above, I would guess. But I'm not sure either yet. This is a hot topic item in the areas where people are concerned with uranium in the dust and some things like that around mining sites and that. So.
So I think what one I'm now talking to Cheryl Magsman about she's already working in Florida in the sugarcane burning populations, and we have not we have a meeting in very early February to sit down and write an Ames page. Um, I'm going to try to keep everybody in the loop as we work on this. She's targeting an April submission with the possibility that it could slip to June because April's terrible. Um, uh, but I think so we haven't settled out what we want to do, but one of the things I would like to do is test this statement that we often lead off or I lead off proposals with is like, well, there's obviously a response to particulate matter, but people spend most of their time indoors, so therefore it must be getting indoors. And so I feel like we could kind of test that hypothesis. Like, do we really need to know indoor air, or is outdoor air good enough? Right? And maybe I'll do everybody out of a job. But it seems like in a high concentration area where you can actually have a fairly large control group with and without air cleaning, um, or yeah, I haven't sorted this out yet, but that's my general idea is actually challenging that concept. And if it does, she already has good collaborators in the area. And so if it does come to pass, I will be uh, asking for help because I think the attractive thing is not, we would have to do little development after what we've already done. But I realize that that is an incorrect statement and it will still be panic mode. So. And also I recognize that the funding landscape is extremely bizarre right now. So we're pretending everything is normal in this conversation. Danny, Will, Misa, anything that you might have observed from, because you've been in the field a lot, and I think sometimes the experience of when you see what's happening and it's dissonant from what we think happens or what we expect to happen or what we're trying to test, sometimes that's fruitful for things to examine.
I think it's been interesting. Maybe this isn't a next step, but it's been interesting to see that most people care, but most people just don't even know where to go to get more information. And so like people will care about their indoor air quality, but like we'll go into a house and they'll have like six scented candles burning. And they're like, yeah, of course they care about my air quality. And we're like, okay, like, we're not gonna say anything about this. Something that's been kicking around in my head is using these systems. So thinking about like when we actually use these systems, but then using them as like developing the system more and combining it with something like a VRF that brings in outdoor air and exchanges it with indoor air or something like that. So kind of two totally different topics that I've been thinking about and seeing, but I don't know if that's helpful for either perspective from either angle.
Danny, just so I just want to make sure I got it. So, like, is it that idea that you can have your candles too if you use this system that mitigates the effect of the candle?
Well, I think it's
Or
more like it's that people care, but they just have
right?
no idea. And
Yeah,
so, a candle is not great for your indoor air quality just because it's combustion particulate right into your air. And so, yeah, Erica, you have one burning. So, yeah, like there are people who really care and they say, like, I want to improve my indoor air quality. And look, I have these filters, I have all this stuff, but it's just like people don't even know that they're doing stuff. Or with Paul's example from a couple weeks ago, like they might use a ton of Fabuloso and they just have no idea that it's bad for them.
right.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
No, thanks. I mean, that's an interesting thing I mean, sometimes we do go like, you can still have this habit you like you have especially if it's something that is really dear to you, and we don't want you to lose the enjoyment you have of that. Can we have you adopt this other thing too, so that you're okay? But that understanding of indoor air, I think, and honestly, I think to me, this suggests some studies that are just talking to people about, well, what is indoor air to you? How do you think about it? Those sorts of things that could what's the word I want? Inform a number of different kinds of studies and would be really cool data that we really need in the field. And it can look at, well, where do you go for it? How you think about it? How does this risk align with others? There's just some really neat stuff. And you can do it in a way that you're not going to lead them to a particular answer, but you're just trying to chat with them and get really voluminous amounts of data. That's a pain to get through, but it's really fun too.
Will's got a hand up.
I was gonna echo a lot of what Danny was saying, because these are discussions that I've had with people since I've been going into homes for the last, 3 years. And I think it's exactly what Danny says. Like people care, but they don't know. I think two things. One, they don't know where to find the resources. And even when they get them, I think they're unsure of how to act or how to put those resources into play. I don't know if it's like, well, I don't want to mess it up, or I don't want to do it wrong, but they're like, okay, I have these things, but how do I put it in practice? Like, what do I do? And when I see the candles, I don't ever tell because sometimes people's like, oh, is this candle bad? And I'm like, well, it is and it isn't. It's like, what are the gains and what are the losses from that? It's like, do you do this because your house stinks? Okay, that's an easy fix. Or do you do it because, like, I don't know, maybe Erica loves the smell of that candle. I mean, there are some scented things that I love the way they smell, but I understand is like I don't need to have that smell for 12 hours. Or maybe there's something I can do after I did it, after I used it or whatever. So, obviously, I think everyone here agrees that we don't want to tell people what to do in their homes when it comes to things like that. But we definitely still want to help them be able to kind of find that balance, right? Maybe the everything in moderation is too much of a cliche when we think about these things. So, people ask me, it's like, well, should I get rid of this? It's like, no, don't get rid of that. I would say first think about why you have it. And if it makes you feel good at the end of the day, light that damn candle, for a little bit, but don't leave it, lit the whole time. There's no reason for it to be lit while you're not home. That's dangerous for many other reasons or whatever. But um, I think the one thing is, where do people find the information? And second, how do they use the information to improve their air quality? And then the cost thing, like the Fabuloso is a great example of one, culture, and two, cost, right? It's readily available. It's like this is what my mom used, my grandma used, whatever. So this is what I use. And then they're like, well, don't they cost a lot of money? So the last couple of presentations I've done about VOCs is I always plug I think it's the EPA Better Choice thing for products. I always plug that because it's giving other options. So don't use
Mhm.
whatever the Myers unscented stuff is if you don't want to. There's more than one option to use for things like that. And I don't know if the Better Choice weighs in cost or not. I'm not sure. I can't remember the last time I looked at it, but I mean, cost is obviously a huge reason why people don't adopt certain things to improve their air quality, whether it's an air cleaner or a different cleaning product or, you know, I don't know, cheaper candles is probably worse. I don't know.
So I think it's safer choice, and let's just put that in the chat. And I don't think that has much to do with the cost of products. Like I think you can go and find house brand that has the safer choice and is cheaper than all the rest. You can find products where they've got the orange scented one and the lavender scented one and the apple blossom scented one and the unscented one, and the unscented one has the safer choice and the other three don't, and they're all the same price. But yeah, I think this is an interesting direction. I mean, I know when some of the sessions I do on healthy housing for practitioners, I'll be like, I talk about all the bad stuff that comes off of cooking, all the particles from cooking. I talk about the moisture in bathrooms, and I talk about all the odors that are in your cleaning products. So you might take it from all of this that you shouldn't bathe, shouldn't clean, shouldn't cook. And I'm not saying that. There's other reasons to do all of this. You could also say, don't have pets. Pets are not about good indoor air quality or saving money, but we have them, and there's a reason for it, right? And I think and so I think finding, to Danny's point, Will's point, you know, how do we, how do we communicate in a way that says, yeah, go ahead and have your stuff, but here's how to do it most safely in a way that fits with your lifestyle.
So we're kind of diving back into the communication discussion here, and then we're a little bit off thinking of projects and ways to take this forward. So I think that's this body of discussion is something we've discussed before, but something that definitely needs work. I have a personal interest in what we started with the survey with, which is understanding not do people care about air quality, but where does it rank or what do they respond to? And then I also feel like we should understand the principles of air quality, but I'm also super interested in, and I don't know how to do this, but finding homes where the indoor air quality is really bad and learning from those homes, right? Rather than trying to say like, all these things are a problem, don't clean, don't bathe, don't cook, but like how could we knock down the worst ones? And that's not a thing that I would be able to project right now, but I know that people have people believe that indoor air quality can be a problem, not just because, we made it up, but because there have been some really striking cases where that was true, right? And so I'm also interested in working on somehow finding and working on worst cases. I don't know how to do that. So bad project idea, bad bad project idea, very vague. Yeah, any other directions? And then I'll go into, are there ones that we want to expand into things that we could do that are tractable, especially things that leverage what we have here? So you can answer either one of those. Okay, well, that was not a good way to ask that question. Um, um, hmm. Let's go back to the interfaces that we started with. Like, what's the next question? There's a number of questions that could be asked, but what is a kind of a wide open question that is just waiting to, because we've done this kind of work, what does that qualify us to do the next step forward?
I do, from what we've developed or working on developing some of the questions we're asking, I do think a logical next step would be out of the residential and into the commercial, hospital, whatever place. I feel like the barrier cost-wise to do that is very different, but the potential gains are also huge. Is that the type of direction you were seeking for the question? Take
Maybe.
what we have and go somewhere else with it?
I mean, maybe I was looking for reactions. Like, I don't believe in writing the same project again. Like, well, we weren't quite done, so here we are again. It's more like we have gained knowledge. Are you talking about the interface question, Christian, or are you talking about interventions maybe?
I just mean building from all of the pieces we've done in this study. We've kind of framed it from what is the information people want? What are the interventions that we might put in? What is the information that people want? Like interact with it. Where and when are these types of interventions worthwhile? I think a similar set of questions exist in a very different user case, with that being large buildings. It has very different challenges, but also barriers that we hit right now that are probably not there for the commercial building. Commercial building doesn't care about drilling a giant hole in the side of the building if it makes other operating costs better.
Right. Are similar technologies not available in commercial buildings? I guess I understood that at least commercial buildings were a lot closer to being able to manage air.
I think some of them are, but a next small step, for example, would be like the multi-unit. I don't think those have that level of control. We're not doing those here, but it could be a pretty big bang for the buck with a single air handler type system.
I mean, one thing about commercial buildings is, unlike residential, they often are already managed to be slightly positively pressurized. But they're not necessarily pressurized to the level that we're talking about in order to have this protective feature when the outdoor air is bad. So, I think Christian is right. There are some things, some obstacles that we have in residential that we wouldn't have, and there is some amount of it's already moved in there's a greater appreciation and understanding for the concept of pressurizing a building in the commercial space than there is in the residential space. So there's a certain skepticism perhaps that's not going to be there. One of the things when Christian was talking, I'll just, while I've got the floor, say I think other user cases are also like not about outdoor air being bad, but just generally using pressure management in buildings for, you know, infection control. The next pandemic, what kind of systems can be designed in so that you've got protection built into a home through pressure management. Um, so I think there's a range of things if on the technical side where we extend what we've done to, as Christian said, different user cases. Um,
Yeah, and I find for me, I find the thought of like managing a large office building, one, intimidating, and two, I feel like there's already expertise out there that's much closer than I could gain. But I think there are probably in between cases like multi-unit buildings like Christian mentioned or small commercial. I don't know if, but then the smaller you go, the closer you get to the same problems we have.
well, so let me say on the commercial side, one of the things that, one of the systems that's really common for at least smaller office buildings, strip malls, things like that. You see them when you're in an airplane. There's just tons of rooftop package units all over the rooftops of these buildings. And very, very often they have these economizers. It's something where some percentage of the air comes from outside. And then it's going through the filter, but it's going through like a MERV 11 or a MERV 8 or a MERV 6 or maybe a MERV 13 filter. So it's really intended to be ventilation that's not that's screening out the big clumpy stuff, not doing what we're doing. And you don't have really the same, one obstacle you have is where would you put something like what we're talking about that would be effective because you don't have this duct somewhere to tap into. So there's something that's closer to what we're doing already in existence, but having some different issues. And I think that honestly, I think the expertise that we have
Hmm.
is good enough collectively.
Hmm.
We have learned some stuff that I think just is not anything they're thinking about in the commercial space. And applying it to that, we've got enough knowledge of what's in the commercial space to be able to at least get somewhere and maybe bring
Hmm.
in some other folks who that's what they do all the time.
Yeah, I guess I've been surprised that no matter what you hear about management, it doesn't seem like people are managing or are assessing indoor versus outdoor at the same time. And that seems weird. It's like the ventilation is either optimized to clean the indoor air from its own sources, or I don't think outdoor air is really considered. And maybe it doesn't need to be if we if we find out that it's not important. What's up, Danny?
That's actually a great segue into what I was thinking. Um, there was a really interesting talk that I saw at Healthy Buildings last summer that this one, I'm forgetting who it was out of the UK. It might have been Jordan Reed out of the UK, but he basically said he did something where it looked at should I open my window? Like if I've been cooking and it's smelly, there's bad indoor air quality, should I open my window and how long is opening my window beneficial for? They basically
Mhm.
came out to this number between 2 and 3 hours. Like after cooking in the UK, open your window for 2 to 3 hours, and then you'd see the biggest drop in indoor air pollution. And after that, you'd start to see an increase in outdoor air pollution. And so I think it's really interesting to have indoor and outdoor air quality data simultaneously because I even do this in my own apartment. Like we'll be cooking and I'll see our air quality jump up. And I'm like, okay, should I open my door? And so I have to go and I'll have to look and I'll look at like how bad is the air quality outside? Would it be more beneficial for me to open this door and exchange air than just let it sit for a while? And so I think that that could be a next step for this interface and for the system is looking at like, okay, this is what the air quality is at inside, outside. What should I do? Like, should I turn the system on? Should I just open a window? Like, what should I do?
Hmm. Erica, Merrily, what do you think?
I think that, yeah, I think that that's really it's a really interesting question because you're looking at I've got and we don't know a lot, at least even within a particular risk. You have different choices about what you could do, and how do you make that decision about do I open it, don't I? And then having that information um, to act on it. I think it would be very interesting to see what they do. It does cause them to be more more aware. But I do like that idea um, because that's the actual situation they should be in when they're making the decision is it better to keep it open? Is it better to close it? And often once we kind of get people excited about something and excited and like they're a little worried about it, um, having them have more information that could help them to make a good decision, can be useful because we don't want people to, well, it's like this. If we have convinced them to some degree that outdoor air can be bad, and we're trying to convince them that, well, your indoor air can be bad too. And so then they're like, well, crap, what do I do? And
Mhm.
if we can talk to them about both places at the same time, give them information on both places at the same time, then while we're increasing their cognitive load, well, I got to figure this, it becomes a little more complicated for them. It's not horribly more complicated.
Mhm.
And I think that is really nifty. I mean, it's a very interesting question and one that, because of the nature of this, indoor versus outdoor environmental health issues, it becomes this is the place where we would see that, and it would be really interesting to look at that. And I think we could set that up too. Again, that would be part of like asking people, what do you need to know? Would you be wondering about what the outdoor was about as well as the indoor? It also helps us to think about the extent to which, for example, the contractors would be talking about indoor and outdoor air for their potential clients, things like that. I mean, it's got several, what's the word, applications, as well, I think. And yeah, it's cool. Sorry. Well,
I guess maybe somewhat adjacent to that. Uh, I don't know. I also, and maybe this is more in response to what Christian was saying about moving into like, commercial spaces. But I feel like we put a lot of effort into making this cool intervention, but I wouldn't say we successfully finished the interventions. And so it's like we have this cool product, but like we still need people to actually adopt it. And so I think going too much of a new direction, I agree, like we don't want to repeat our work, but like I think there's something to be said about finishing, like, taking this to the finish line and getting it mass adopted or whatever that might look like and translating it into success. There's still an opportunity for.
No, I agree 100%, Erica. I was actually expecting somebody to raise SBIR. But so for tech people, interface people, I'm curious what you think of that. Are we far from it? Is it not the right direction, or is it promising? What do you think?
Uh, I think there's opportunities for a product here. I don't see opportunities for a business here, right? Which,
Mm.
SBIR doesn't have to be just the business approach. I worry about the true novelty of some of these things. So that's like my commercialization concern is um, we don't have a highly unique widget. I think we have a good idea of things that need to be done. But from a commercialization path, that would be my concern is what would actually be differentiating this enough for the time and investment for it to be a novel new standalone thing.
And I've long thought that the ideal thing would be we get to the end and we've demonstrated its potential, the efficacy and value well enough that a company like AirCycler says, yeah, we want to do it, and picks it up and does those things that we're not able to do to make it really more plug and play and commercialized. Um, but I I would much rather just hand it off to somebody than have to be part of the commercialization of it myself.
I think there's also getting it to that point. So it's I think Christian, you've been through that cycle, I think, and so I feel like you have to do a certain amount of demonstration. I don't feel like we're getting all that way in this project. Um, and so and yes, I don't have any desire to run a company or to try to do marketing. And yet I also don't get to just stop whenever I want to. Like, okay, I'm tired of this. Now maybe somebody will handle the rest for me. And so my question is not, are we going to start a company? It's more like if we want this to have a greater impact. And by this, I mean, yeah, we can question ourselves as to whether it's unique, but I think the general truth is that people don't know what to do about wildfire smoke in their homes still, and we don't know what to tell them. And so there is a gap between what's available to people and what could be available to people. And so it's that gap that I think we wanted to address. We wanted to contribute to that gap. And so how's that going to get there? And I will have to close the meeting soon. I'm sorry, let us run over, and then I have another one right at 2. Okay, so there were some ideas here. Boy. Yeah, I'm trying to think about how to take this forward, and I can't really take it forward by myself. I think but I'm gonna try to think about having maybe pointing to people and having them lead a discussion on something for like a whole meeting, and then would that be acceptable? I will schedule with you, of course. But it seems like we covered a lot of bases here, and then there's a tendency to want to delve in, and so that can happen. And so maybe we'll take some of these and start putting them on the agenda. Okay. Thanks, people.
Okay.
Take care.
Sure, have a good weekend.
Bye.
See you at Mayor on Sunday.
Go Seahawks.
Go Seahawks.